Merry Christmas and Happy New Year to all of you. I welcome you to the Cultural Modeling Program. My name is Leshe Kandeta. Later on in the program, we'll be looking at 2008 and what has been happening in the year. And our special guest is the governor for the Bank of Zambia, but how we introduce him later on. For now, let's go to a recap of our program for last week. We were looking at citizens empowerment. We were with Irene and Mabel Mwamba. Watch with me.
We exist because government had a dream to empower people, but it takes people to make dreams come true. So what I want to say is that I would like to see in 2009 a Zambia where we start dreaming together, looking at the desired future that we see 10 years from now, and begin co-creating that future. It is not a CEC agenda alone, it is our agenda. So I want to end by just saying, how can you help CEC deliver? Give us a chance to work. Don't talk to the press. Get curious. Come and look for information from us. We have a website. You can go to www.ceec.org. And we also have a telephone number, and it's 0211 252150. And we have physical bodies in all the 9 provinces working for the CEC. So if you're out of Lusaka, this is a national program. Contact us, start talking to us. Let's ensure that we make a difference and create a different Zambia.
We're already on the path of transforming this society. And all I would say to everyone is let's walk the path together, you know, because no man is an island. No one will achieve anything on their own. And I think, you know, the attitudes, let's not be selfish. Let's, you know, anything that you do, let's integrate. Let's pick up ideas from each other. You know, one mind is, you know, 10 minds are better than one. So let's always keep in mind that, you know, if we want to move forward, we have to be very open. We have to communicate. Communication is very, very important. Like Mabel is saying, you know, you go there, talk to people, meet people, and have a wide spectrum. Let's just move out of this closed box. Let us be there and go there, you know, and have our aims and goals and fulfill our dreams.
Wonderful. Welcome back. That was a recap of the program that we had for you last week, where we featured the Director General of the Citizens Economic Empowerment Commission and the Zambian living in the United Kingdom, Ms. Irene Kalunga, discussing economic empowerment there. This evening, we have a special guest in the name of the Governor for the Bank of Zambia, Dr. Caleb Fundanga, to look at what has been happening in 2008 in terms of the economy and the financial affairs. Dr. Fundanga, welcome to the program and good evening.
Good evening.
Thank you very much. If we look back at 2008, in your view, what have been some of the most prominent moments, both in the economy generally and in financial affairs?
Well, 2008 has been a very momentous year. I think so many things have happened this year, both domestically as well as internationally. In terms of the Zambian economy, as you know, we are a copper-based economy. One of the biggest developments in our economy has been the movement in the price of copper. Starting from 2006, copper had started to go up to very high levels, which to some extent changed the economic outlook for our country. But as you can see from the table here, if you look to April, by July I think we had reached a peak of about $8,900 per metric ton, and then it has just been a downward
trend since then.
And I think by just before Christmas, that Tuesday, we had reached something like $2,850 per metric ton from a high of 8,900 in July. So this obviously is a very big development for us. It has got a lot of implications, but it is also arising from developments outside the economy, which we will discuss at a later stage. That's one thing for sure, which is very prominent this year. Secondly, this is also a year when we have seen a number of mining activities come on stream. I'm thinking here of two Lumwana mine. Just started producing its copper concentrates in December That's towards towards the end of the year.
Yes.
And then also Munali nickel.
Yes,
first
Abidjan,
time Zambia is exporting nickel, and this has happened this year. So these are important developments. Other than that, there are a lot of other developments on the copper belt. For instance, new smelters coming on stream, the KCM, and other developments. Some of them are smaller, but they are all very, very significant. If we come closer to Lusaka here, we have seen, for instance, the Chilanga, new cement factory is come on stream, and as you know, in recent times, the price of cement has gone up very, very highly, mainly a reflection of the increased economic activity. There are also other positive things I can mention. For instance, we know that the investment pledges that we've had this year, I'm told that probably they have reached something in the region of 9 billion.
9 billion?
Yeah, I keep on getting very, very good figures. But all these are a reflection of the fact that Zambia has become a very attractive investment destination. We had, for instance, you mentioned the Euro Money Conference. That was a milestone, because I can tell you that even Euro Money themselves told us that they've never held an investment conference in sub-Saharan Africa. So the Zambian one was the first, and as you saw, it was oversubscribed. We didn't even have enough space at the hotel where we met. We are hoping that this coming year, when we hold a second Euro Money Conference for Zambia, we can have even more people. And there's great interest. I've been told now, we've been discussing even to go and do road shows in New York, to go and already we had some team that went with the Minister for Commerce, Trade and Industry that went to China, they went to Dubai, they went to India. So these are new developments, and which we hope that are responsible for some of these interests that we see. But most importantly, I think I should mention that as we close the year, 2 new banks have been registered in Zambia. Access Bank started operations, and then we have got the First National Bank, which we've just given them a license to operate. So I can say that this year we've licensed 2. This is
First National Bank
from South Africa.
All the South FNB.
Yes.
Oh, I see.
Yeah, this is First National Bank Zambia Limited. So they will set shop early in the year, but we have given them a license this year, and hopefully in future we can also license others. If you were to look at the non-bank financial sector, we've licensed a lot of leasing companies, microfinance institutions, and so forth. All these are aimed at fulfilling our objective of financial inclusiveness. We want to ensure that as many Zambians as possible have got access to financial services, whether for credit purposes or for savings purposes. They need to have access. If you look at the landscape and see where banks are establishing branches, it's everywhere now. In the past, branches, like if you take Lusaka, bank branches are only in Cairo Road. Now there are banks in Kalingalinga, in Matero, in Chilenje, in Garden Compound, everywhere. They are opening in Makeni, they are opening in Irilai, they are opening. And we are hoping that all the country will be covered in the long run. But all this requires investments, of course. But something has been started, and we need to grow it up so that everybody can have access to financing. I think the biggest challenge that this country faced started with the illness of our late beloved President, Levi Patrick Mwanawasa, when he fell ill in Egypt in June at the occasion of the African Union Summit. That event alone, I think, was one of the biggest drawbacks for this country. As you know, he had been at the forefront of the current economic reform program and the current wave of success. So when he got ill until he died, all that period of his long illness was characterized by a lot of uncertainty. And then finally, he passed on 19th August, and that period, a long period of mourning, and then finally his burial, and immediately after that we had to consider the election for a new president, which the constitution dictates has to be undertaken within 90 days after the death of an incumbent president. So that was done. I must say that these two events, of course, have been very costly to the country. The state funeral, as well as the conduct of elections, they were not budgeted for, but also just the uncertainty. For instance, the elections, in the run-up to the conclusion of the elections, nobody knew who was going to be elected. So that creates policy uncertainty. People don't know whether the new head of state will be somebody who will reverse the economic policies, because investors are always looking for a stable investment environment, and if policies are threatened by change. This is not to say that and if anybody else had gotten elected, they would have changed the policy, but just uncertainty is always something that is not good for business. So we had that period also. But thank God, Zambians are very peaceful people, and this is something to the credit of all Zambians. This is one of the few countries in Africa which actually has never experienced violence in the way that you see it in other countries, where fellow citizens take up machetes and start cutting each other. This has never happened. And I think the by-election we had proved that Zambians can be relied upon as very peaceful people. But this is important for investment, because no investor wants to come to invest in a country and then tomorrow the country is up in flames and all their efforts are bent away. I think every Zambian needs to be congratulated for whatever role they played in this process. It has helped to firmly anchor us as a country of peace.
Yes, indeed.
I think even in the past, Zambia has only been a country of refuge. Those who have been running away from their brothers and sisters in different countries have usually come here to find safety. Other factors which have negatively affected us in the last year are oil prices. The first half, if you can look at the crude oil prices, you'll see that in the first half, prices were going up. In fact, oil prices went so much up that they reached slightly above $140 per barrel. And then they started going down, and today we are talking of a barrel costing less than $40. Now, of course,
a high of
140.
Yes.
So you have had more or less $100 knocked off the price of a barrel of oil. Now, this development, one is if you look at the copper price graph and this one, they are more or less the same.
They're identical.
It shows that the demand for commodities, whether they be agricultural or be oil, is going down because the global economies or the industrial economies are going down. And this is how oil has also been affected. It may be good for us as a landlocked country that the price of oil is falling, because because we consume a lot of oil. To bring goods here from the ports and to export our things, we consume a lot of oil. So now oil is going to be slightly cheaper.
Oh yes.
So it means that we can probably reduce our cost of production and be slightly competitive.
So in terms of these problems on the international scene, what specific measures do you think we should be taking to cushion the economy from
the other one I wanted to
second and third tier?
Before we can get to that, I thought I could also mention the developments in the food sector. Earlier in the year, when prices of oil were going up, there was also food crisis, global food crisis. Grain was in short supply, so prices of rice, even maize went up. And that has had also a lot of impact. Although in Zambia we are supposed to have produced about enough for our own needs, but we are not on an island here. Some leakages occur and so forth, and even domestic prices get influenced by prices prevailing elsewhere. So food prices are also very, very important in determining where we are. So I think generally that's a broad outlook of what has happened in there, both domestically as well as internationally.
Yes. Now, specifically, what measures do you think we should be taking to cushion ourselves from third tier and the second tier effects of these recessions? Because obviously, there must be a lag in the effects.
Well, I think different measures need to be taken by different sectors. I cannot claim to be an expert in all the sectors. So maybe I can say a little bit about the banking sector,
yes, indeed,
which we are responsible for, and then just do a pedestrian kind of look at what other sectors may do, if I can do justice to that.
Yes.
But for the banking sector, generally, we have been striving to have a strong banking sector, a well-capitalized banking sector. By a bit of stroke of good planning, we had actually increased the minimum capital requirements last year. And its effect from January, this was increased from 2 billion to 12 billion. It's a significant increase by Zambian standards.
Okay.
So what it meant is that the banks now are well capitalized, and this has been confirmed even by recent missions of the IMF and the World Bank, but also to improve on supervision. Clearly, some of the problems you've seen in developed countries arose out of the fact that the quality of supervision had gone down. There were cases where people have been lending to people who are not deserving. Some people attribute that to greediness, that you have this culture of where if you perform well, they give you a bonus and so forth. So in the mad drive to earn bonuses, you end up giving even loans which you are not supposed to give. Now, this obviously something that needs to be curtailed. So what we have done in Zambia is that we've strengthened supervision. If a problem is about to emerge in a bank in terms of having a high portfolio of bad debts, non-performing loans and things like that, we are able to see that there is a problem there and quickly take remedial measures. But also we have introduced the Credit Reference Bureau.
That's right.
Which ensures that before you can lend to anybody, the loan has to go through, the loan application has to be cleared through the bureau, so that the lending institution, the institution intending to lend to that particular borrower, will know what other loans that individual has, with which institutions, and how they've been performing. Clearly, it will not be good for somebody who has not been repaying a loan they already hold with an institution or to be given another loan. So this credit information is very important. In fact, it exists in the developed countries, although one wonders what really happened, because this system seems
the information they had, now how did they get to this?
Failed them at some stage. But this is really very important, and we've fought hard to put it in place. Now that it's in place, we hope that it can help us to ensure that we don't suffer similar failures of financial institutions. Now, regarding that's really what we are doing as a financial sector. Regarding the other sectors, I think it's also very clear that if this country has to survive economically, it's important that we take agriculture more seriously than we have done so far. I think we have talked about agriculture so many times, but the actions have not matched the talking. So one hopes that we can be able to really get agriculture moving. There is no reason why we can't do this, because Zambia has got a lot of land.
Arable land.
We have a lot of rain. We have a lot of surface water in the rivers, in the lakes. We have a lot of underground water. So we need to harness these so that we can produce all the time. Obviously, agriculture based just on the rains is not very good, because
it's not sustainable.
There are certain years when the rains will not be adequate, and that you have a problem. But if you can also harness these huge volumes of water so that we can do irrigation, then it will be possible to do 3 crops instead of 1. Because when you are using the rain, you only do 1 crop. We can do other exotic crops and so forth. Some people have said that we must shift, we must change our consumption habits and shift a little bit from too much in shima, and eat some other things like sweet potatoes, pumpkin, all of which we grow. You can also take for lunch sweet potatoes with carpenter and pumpkin leaves, and then in the evening you have your shima. The other day you eat rice. I must say that there has been a lot of success in the growing of rice. Chama rice, mungu rice, they are good types of rice and very tasty. And Zambians should be encouraged to eat this as a substitute to maize. So that 50% of our food is other things. I'm saying this because this will enhance our food security. Because maize is bulky, and it also requires a lot of imported inputs, fertilizer, seed, and all this kind of thing. And so it is very expensive to produce. So those are the options in the field of agriculture. But if we can diversify agriculture, we can grow more things for export, cotton, tobacco, coffee, tea. Somebody came recently from Nigeria and was telling me that they think that cocoa can grow. And you know, cocoa, yes, cocoa today has got the highest price in 23 years for cocoa. I wish we were producing cocoa. Because I'm saying this because some years back somebody was saying you can't produce coffee here. But yet we are now producing
it's there, yeah,
so even in cocoa, I think it's possible. But there are so many things that the Zambian weather can support actually, and we need to produce all these things in large quantities and export. If you look at rice, why can't we produce rice in the Kashue Flats area here? In Luapula there are so many marshlands where you can grow rice in large quantities and export to West Africa where they like eating rice.
Maybe while you're on the point of agriculture, sir, a few weeks ago, the Zambia National Farmers Union were saying there is no supportive culture in the financial sector to the farming community, meaning they are not giving loans. Therefore, how does your message tarry into the behavior on the floor of the banking system and all these people?
I can't say that they are not giving loans. If you look at the sectoral distribution of loans,
yes,
until recently, the biggest sector obtaining loans was agriculture. It used to get about 20%, 19, and so forth
of the loans given.
Yes, but recently,
this
has turned around. Now, the biggest recipient is a category called personal loans.
Or personal loans for consumption.
Well, these are loans which banks are giving to mainly salaried people, and they are using them to maybe buy houses, mortgages now. You know, we didn't have building societies there until recently.
Yes, sir.
So banks had taken over this role, and there has been a very good development here because initially you couldn't get a facility for over 5 years. But now banks are giving you a mortgage for 20 years. It shows how far we have come. So people are borrowing to build houses. Those who work, because the salary provides at least a guarantee that you pay back. People are borrowing to buy cars. People are borrowing to buy furniture and other personal consumption items. But some people will also tell you that given that a number of people live on these small holders outside Lusaka and the other towns, some of the borrowers are actually using that money to enhance production for things like vegetables, for chickens and so forth. So some of the money does go into real production, but by and large the bulk of it is for consumption. But the point that one has also to note is that in the past, people who are working just used to rely on their employers to give them a housing loan, a car loan, bicycle loan, a furniture loan and so forth. Now, with this development, it means that companies have been saved from using part of their capital into unproductive activities, and this has been shifted to banks, so that the money available in companies can be used for the core activities, which in itself is a positive development, that you have shifted resources from companies that used to, to lend to their workers, and usually at very economic rates, to banks. And so the companies now remain with more resources, and they can therefore do something more productive. That's the way you can look at it. Don't look at it entirely as unproductive, but it's very beneficial to companies right now. Now, so agriculture now is number 2 to personal loans category. So it is still very significant. And then you've got manufacturing and others which are getting something below 15%, 10% and the like. Now, the problem with the current lending is that usually it's the big farmers who borrow from banks. So when people tell you that the banks are not lending, it's true, probably they're not lending so much, but it's usually the small farmers who are the biggest culprits in this problem. The smallest farmers. The big farmers are able to get money. That's why they are running the big farms and so forth. Although even them probably would like to get a little bit more for their expansion and so forth. But the problem sometimes is that banks are not the right source for medium to long-term lending. You need other institutions which probably don't exist in Zambia at the moment, like development banks and so forth. So that's where they can get money for 5 years, 10 years. Banks will provide short-term. And I think they've been providing, but it's not enough. And it's certainly not going to the small farmers. So the question you need to ask is, how can we help the small farmers access? Do they need cash? I think most of them don't need cash. probably they need inputs like seed, fertilizer, pesticides, and
They
the
do.
like.
They do actually.
Currently, some of this is being provided through outgrower schemes by big companies. If you go to the cotton farmers, the big companies borrow money from the banks, and then they buy seed and fertilizer and give commodity loans, of which they recover when these people sell. So there is some way, but it's not very satisfactory, and we need to challenge ourselves sufficiently to look at other ways of delivering credit to the small farmers.
But all these prospects of growth and doing something to achieve Vision 2030 objectives in the FNDP are being challenged by certain behaviors, I think, in the financial sector, which are driving, some of the behaviors are actually driving inflation up and speculation in the exchange rate. How do we move forward?
Well, the Kwacha behavior has arisen from a lot of things. You see, the Kwacha for quite some time was appreciated. And I know that everybody was rejoicing that now we have a strong Kwacha.
Yes, sir.
But there were others who are also not happy about that. Those who export, the non-traditional exporters.
They were not happy.
I'm sure you've been following when they hold meetings and so forth. They're always complaining that this situation, which is often referred to as the Dutch disease, can destroy the diversification effort when the local currency becomes very expensive. But our stance has always been that the foreign currency, like any other commodity, must be determined by the forces of supply and demand. If there are a lot of dollars, sure, you don't expect to have very expensive dollars available on the market. But if the dollars are in short supply, they must be expensive in Kwacha terms. That has always been our view. Obviously, in order to support the stable economy kind of stance that we always advocate for, it is important that the exchange rate is stable. However, if it has to move, because market fundamentals dictate that it must move, we should not block that. Because if we do, then we'll be creating misallocation of resources in the country. Now, obviously now there isn't enough dollar on the market. The earnings from the copper sector, especially in the last quarter, they are so low. Even if you exported the same copper in the fourth quarter, you will get less than 50% of what you got last year because of the price. The price of the copper. Yes. So it means, therefore, that the revenues we are getting from copper exports are very, very low. Similarly, other commodities also are not enjoying very high prices. Earlier on, I was talking about the reduced inflows from those who used to come and invest in the government securities. Similarly, those who used to come and invest in equities, if you look at the performance of the Lusaka Stock Exchange, it has been very bad. Because some of the foreign investors have left the Zambian market. So all these factors suggest that there is reduced inflow of the dollar into the Zambian economy. Would you expect then to have a stronger Kwacha? The answer is no. Now, these are home. How do we reverse the trend? The reversing can only happen if you export more. If you diversify the economy and start to export. That's why earlier on I was saying I wish we were growing cocoa. Because the international price of cocoa now is high. You can improve this by maybe value addition. The agricultural exports you are sending now, add value to them by processing them. Then you export something of greater value. These are some of the alternative things that we need to do in order to strengthen our economy, so that if we are exporting, if we are producing cotton, instead of exporting cotton, we export cotton cloth, cotton cloth, or better still, garments. We produce jeans or shirts and things. We get more for the same cotton than we are getting now. That's the only way we can get more. If we are producing copper, let's produce copper cables. We'll be getting more money, and we'll create more jobs for our people. That's the way to success, not to export raw materials, to export metals like copper and nickel and so forth in their raw form. Then we'll be doomed to this kind of situation that we are facing today. This message is not new. It has been there all the time, but somewhat we just have not been acting on it. And I think that the challenge to the government, to every Zambian, is not just to talk about these things, to do something.
Do something.
Yes, even if you are cutting a piece of wood, do some carving out of it and sell something of value instead of selling a log. You get more out of it.
But now, while still discussing the issue of the exchange rate, and I would like to get your view on how we'll end the year in terms of some other indicators, inflation. What do you think this has? What effect do you think this has had on the GDP and generally economic activity? We had projected single digit. Now we will be closing at something more than 15%.
I don't know the final number. It's coming out this week, though.
It's coming out this week.
But last month we had 15.3. There was a slight increase, at least better than the previous months when we had a 1% increase. Somewhere the 0.1% increase, suggesting that probably with the last month we might see even a decline. But various measures which have been put in place perhaps will assist inflation to come down. Clearly, the price of fuel has come down very substantially.
Wonderful, yeah.
And the fuel filters through the rest of the economy. So, in the medium term, I will expect to see this having a positive impact. If you look at mid-meal prices, the government has taken measures, some of them by way of subsidization of maize. Regrettably, even the locally grown maize now has to be subsidized because some people were speculating. But the government has taken measures which will ensure that at least the price of maize is stabilized until the next crop season starts. These are positive things. We are hoping that through hard work, if we can produce more, the next year we have more maize on the market, we can be able to address these problems. But clearly the global situation is not very favorable. So it therefore means that when the price of copper had hit 4,000, I thought it was going to stop, but it has continued. It's now 2,000 something. So one should not hope for a lot. However, I'm optimistic that if the measures taken by the developed countries succeed in reviving their economies, maybe in 18 months' time we may see a global economy growing again. And at that time, then the demand for our commodities will also pick up. So until that time, we are in a difficult situation. But we can do something for ourselves by ensuring that we develop other economic activities. And in this regard, I'm drawn to the fact that the government already has some certain projects in place, like the Triangle of Hope, this Lusaka East Industrial Multi-Facility Economic Zone. That one is supposed to encourage industrialization with the support of the Japanese government. Because the Japanese government think that an African country can actually industrialize in the same way that Asian economies did industrialize. And that is an example they want to showcase. We are hoping that we can succeed because our well-being as a nation could depend very much on what happens in a facility like that. Secondly, the Chinese also have got their own in Kalulush, where they've got their copper smelter. They are doing another multi-facility economic zone, where they hope that they can encourage investors to do all things, textiles, value addition to copper and other things. That will create alternative employment for our people and alternative export commodities. That is also good. I understand they have also got another small project by the airport area here in Lusaka.
Yes, NEMFES there.
Yes, which is aimed at producing light, exportable commodities which can be exported by air to other countries. These I see as the future for our country, and a good future because it's going to usher us into the industrial age. But that age also will ensure that we can use some of our raw materials into those new industries.
That's right.
I think we have even minerals. We've got a lot of minerals here.
There are a lot,
and if they can be processed into products with a higher value, that would create jobs. That would create new sources of foreign currency, and we shouldn't be crying. So the challenge is to work hard and utilize these opportunities. Cooperate with those that can help us to do these things rather than just look at them as exploiters. There's no country in this world that has developed without cooperation. After all, new ideas about products are usually copied from others. If you see a country that is capable of copying a watch, a country that is capable of copying the suit. You can make a Pierre Cardin suit as if it was made by the original. You should start to respect that country. Because it means that they are capable of learning exactly what the others can produce, and that is the road to success. Most of us, if we look back when the Japanese started producing cars, a Honda was just a tiny little car. Look at what the Honda has become today. That's the road. I'm sure only one person started manufacturing a car in the world. The rest copied
yes,
from that person. So Africans had better wake up also, and they start learning from others and collaborating with us for the purpose of developing their own products.
There is one aspect which the Minister of Finance and National Planning, Dr. Sokotwane, mentioned just when he came into office. He says, notwithstanding this global recession and the financial meltdown, there are still people out there who are interested in investing in economies. What would you say? What comment do you have on that? And what would you say to those who have already invested in Zambia, like mining companies, and those who are intending to invest in the country?
Well, I think the most important thing is the policy framework. If we have a good environment, it means that if our policies are investor friendly, we're not threatening to nationalize. Those who have taken the risk of coming to invest in our country, we work hard towards having a stable economy where inflation does not eat into the efforts of those that have worked so hard. Then we can expect more investment to come flowing into this country, because we have so many raw materials. That's what people are looking for. People can't just go on Sunday and start saying, I'm investing here. You've got to go somewhere where there is some natural resource which you can exploit, or something you can mix with something else in order to produce a useful product. And Zambia has those opportunities. There are so many. Even in areas like electricity, we can generate a lot of electricity, although we don't have enough now. It's just new investments will enable us to achieve more in this area. Similarly, in the agriculture, I've already talked manufacturing. There are so many things that we can do. Even things like producing fish. If we went seriously into fish farming with all the water we have, we could be exporting fish from this country. How is it possible that we are importing fish from China? Tilapia of all things. How is it possible? And where are the Chinese producing this? They're producing them in fish ponds.
Fish ponds?
Yes, but here we are importing when we shouldn't be importing these things. So the challenges are that most of these things are simple things. They're not very complicated to do. So that is where we should be focusing. It means a serious orientation of everything we do, including our education, so that when somebody is leaving school, perhaps they should have the skills required to go and start something on their own. I used to, when I was at school, used to do agricultural science. I found it useful because at least I knew how to grow cabbages and to cook chickens as a kid. And at that stage, I could easily launch myself. But the point is that if you have got a kid who already has got those skills, even if you give them a small loan to start with, they will make use of it. But if you are going to give a small loan to somebody who has got no idea about production, there are some people who simply think that there is nothing that can be done here. And I'm sure you've heard a lot of them say there is nothing that
happening, nothing happening.
But when you bring a foreigner here, they say, my God, what a country.
So where is
because
the
you
problem?
can do everything. Partly the problem is in the mind. We have grown up with the fact that we believe people should provide for us. I know of foreigners who have come here with nothing. And now they've worked with their bare hands initially. And today they're very comfortable and they would never want to go back. So if we are not careful, if we just continue with this docile attitude, one day we'll wake up and find that even all this land we talk about has been taken away by foreigners. And we only have...
Yes, Governor, we'll move to some questions from my colleagues from the media viewers. We are talking to the Governor of the Bank of Zambia, Dr. Caleb Fundanga. And for you, Mr. Charles Kalala from Ndola, if you want to understand who Dr. Fundanga is, look on the money, on your notes. If you see that signature there, that signature is for this man I'm talking to. So when he speaks about these things, he's speaking with authority because So we'll go to some questions from the media and we'll come back and close the discussion with Dr. Fundanga.
I am Shapi from Reuters. Zambia was due to be rated this year. Would you just fill us in on what has happened to the credit rating? Is it related to the financial crisis that the whole world is facing? And if it doesn't happen this year, when do we see the credit rating? And then secondly, would you just give us your view on the prospects of the copper industry, regardless of the difficulties that have been faced in the year? Thank you very much.
Sakala Julius, Roger Phoenix. Just in addition to Shapi's question on the copper production sector, I wanted to get it from the governor himself. Are we talking about the job losses in the mining industry? Are we talking about the copper production, national copper production targets reducing for this year? And then secondly, due to the global credit crunch, there's been talk of the global economy being in recess. Is Zambia at a risk? Are we talking about a similar scenario locally, and by what percentage, supposing it happens?
Thank you very much. Coming to Mr. Shapi's question, Zambia was due to be rated this year. What has happened? It is indeed true that we were due to be rated, and the process did start. The first part of that process was to select an advisory firm, a firm which would advise us on how to proceed to being rated. And that has been done. There was an international tender, and companies applied, financial institutions, and eventually one company, JP Morgan, was selected. So that's one giant step. We have selected an advisory firm, JP Morgan. Now, the next stage was for JP Morgan to get on board and help us in terms of advising on those institutions which are supposed to prepare detailed analysis for consideration, and then also to help us to actually do a tender for a rating agency. Now, that's the stage which has not happened yet, mainly because of what happened here when we had the tragedy from the beginning of the year. Things, of course, we had to go to elections, and so you can't get the rating agency when you are also voting and the like. So everything has been delayed because of the unfortunate situation that we faced in the second half of the year. But having selected rating agency, and also we have the funding for paying a rating agency, which has been provided courtesy of DFID. I can mention this because they have been helping us quite a lot in many of the things that we've been doing. So it's a question of time. I think that once the Minister of Finance has done with the budgeting process and so forth, that's one thing is going to shift his attention on, because the whole process is being done through the Ministry of Finance. So that's where we are. I think we are on course, but rather delayed due to the unfortunate developments in the economy in the second half of the year. Now, prospects for the copper industry. Obviously, recent developments have not been favorable to the copper industry. But I must also say that when you are looking at the copper industry, it is not as if the whole year has been a bad one. When I was talking, I said that we had reached a peak of about $8,900 US dollars per metric ton this year. So it is just in the last quarter in particular that the price has fallen so much. So that when finally figures are in, when we will close the books and look at the average price for copper for this year, it may be hovering around 5,000 to 6,000 US dollars per metric ton. That might be the average price. So at that average price, perhaps one shouldn't be talking of a catastrophe for the industry. Things can happen very fast, as you have seen. I mean, if you look at how we were complaining about oil prices and where they are now, within one single year you hit the roof,
140
and then you hit the bottom. So personally, if I was a miner, I would not start closing my mine so early. Besides, I would expect that every well-run company should have built up reserves during this period when the going was very good. And the reason why we build reserves is so that you can use them on a rainy day. And now, I don't know what some of these companies did when the price was very high, or whether they want to run, so that they can save a little bit of what they got. But a normal thing to do in such a crisis would be perhaps to rely a little bit on your reserves. That's the same thing we do even at the central bank. When the going is good, we accumulate forex reserves. When the situation gets bad, we release some of them. I mean, that's what companies do. But of course, you have to start focusing on where you are going to go. Is it possible that there will be a turnaround or not? Now, if you think that there will be no turnaround, perhaps you could start closing after some time. But things could just change. Most of you will recall what happened in 2002 when Anglo left this country. I remember that was the time when I just came to the Bank of Zambia. I thought, now, this is it. This country is going to go down. I was even remembering a warning I was given when I was coming here. Somebody said, do you really want to leave the job you are doing and go to do this job you have been offered? And somebody said, well, somebody has got to do it, Yes. And then I come, it was compounded by Anglo even pulling out. But we said, this can't be the end of the world. So we soldiered on, and look at what happened. There was a turnaround, and those who bought Anglo assets, I'm sure they went to the bank smiling, isn't it? So to some extent, business is about risk. And I think those who run away from risk immediately it rears its head will never be good business people. They will probably never make money. You must be able to weather the storm in order that you can make even more money. But if at the first sign of trouble you bolt, then you will never be rich. So those who want to give up on Zambia, I only say that it's unfortunate because it's a bit too early for them to leave. I haven't looked at their financials, but I would not expect that after such a buoyant first half of the year, they could be in such a situation that they have to live in a rush manner, in the manner that they are doing. That is not possible. There are some mines, though, that have been affected by other factors outside the price development. For instance, if you look at Bwanamkubwa mine, Bwanamkubwa mine depends on processing ores from launch in Congo. Understand that that source has been stopped, which then suggests that the basis for their business doesn't exist. There's nothing to process, so you can't remain open when you don't have the copper ore to process. In such a case, one can understand, but one hopes that when they close, they are not closing completely, that when the possibility for getting the ores from Congo will reopen, they can also reopen the mine.
That's right.
So that's the way one should look at it. You see, Lumwana, they've made a huge investment, and they just started the production in December. They have not said no, because now the price of copper has fallen to this low level, we will not produce anymore. You must also remember that when most of these mines were being bought by the current owners, the price was even lower.
Lower than it
is. Yes, it
even
was $1,500 US at the time they made decisions to come and buy these mines. So when it's at 3,000, would you say that they've reached Armageddon? No. So, of course, individual investors have got their own outlook on life. One cannot force them, but if they leave, I'm sure that others will fill the gap. But my appeal again is to Zambians. With all these developments, surely should we just sit back and each time cry when a foreign investor goes and so forth? Shouldn't we have some Zambians, for God's sake, teaming up and establishing a mine owned by a Zambian group
of people? Because
I'm sure the Zambians will not run away from Zambia when the price of copper falls, will they? They are homegrown boys and girls. They will weather the storm.
They will move from Kitwe to Lusaka.
I think that's the real challenge. It's a great pity that a great mining country like Zambia, with so many mining engineers, people with experience. Now coming to the credit crunch, is Zambia likely to be affected? I think in my explanation I did explain that we are already affected. What you see as the collapse in the price of copper is as a result of developments in the developed countries, which started with this credit crunch problem. Now, because of that problem, the economies are not performing well. Some of them have gone in recession. And because they're in recession, the demand for imports like primary products, metals like copper has gone down, including oil, and hence this development. So we are, to a large extent, affected. We all live in a global economy. Let me also emphasize that recently, because of globalization talk and so forth, it's as if we have known the world for the first time. Zambia, since it started exporting copper, has been very much intertwined in the global economy. Even all these risks of prices falling and so forth are things that we should have always known. If you look back, when we got independence in '64, the price of copper was very high, and bowled by wars in other parts of the world and so forth. We survived, we had a good time, and then the price went down. Even at that time, people were saying, you must diversify. So the good times disappeared, and then went through a very difficult period. And then suddenly we've had this, I must say, it's a very brief period of buoyancy. And then again, we're back to where we were. But things have changed to some extent. I think that the Zambian economy is slightly stronger than before. We now have the non-traditional exports. It's much stronger now. I was hoping that this year would hit $1 billion worth of non-traditional exports. We might reach there or we might not reach there, but wherever we are, I think even the most difficult of times, we should at least hit $900 million
At least.
I'm mentioning this figure because in the year 2000, when the mines were nationalized, the total exports from Zambia were only worth $800 million. Last year, our exports were above $800 million.
800.
Yes. So already the non-traditional exports sector has grown to a level where its total value is exceeding the total value of of exports of Zambia in 2000. And so this is the ray of hope I have, that if we can continue putting in place policies which are friendly to investors, and they invest in other sectors other than copper, we should one day reduce very significantly our reliance on copper. So that whatever happens to copper, we can simply say, well, that's just another bad story, but we have other sectors to rely on. So therefore, these hopes that uranium may be here are good. The hopes that we might even have oil are good things. The hopes that we can actually become the bread basket for the sub-region are good things on which we should anchor our dreams on and our efforts on, so that we can indeed realize these things and free ourselves from dependence on copper. In saying this, I'm not saying that having copper should be treated as a curse. There are many countries which could fight us just to get the privilege of producing copper the way we produce it. The real thing really is how we use this fortune of having copper in order to diversify. That's the real challenge that we all must face. But we should not say, no, we are unlucky to have copper. You are very lucky to have copper, and you should not cry.
Thank you very much, Governor, for that insight into those questions that were asked by my colleague. We'll now go to the close of this discussion with you, Governor. Obviously, from what you are saying, what is very, very important is to refocus our values, our attitudes, and the way we do things. We are in a festive season, and we are at the end of the year. What is your message going forward for this country?
Well, I think the message is that we should work hard. As Zambians, we should not expect that somebody is Santa Claus. Since you've mentioned that we are in this festive season, this season is associated with Santa Claus.
Yes.
This one who goes
giving
to out gifts
while we are doing nothing
and so forth. I think that Zambians should not believe that there is somebody there who is out to give us food, to give us all the various things that we need. I think we can do these things ourselves. And what is required is hard work, confidence that we can deliver, and so forth. There are so many markets yawning here in our neighborhood. If you go to the Copper Belt, the Congolese market is huge. And if we could apply ourselves to to dominate that market, produce everything and
Yes,
sell
and
to them,
sell it to them.
and get forex. Understand that they're even willing to pay you cash in dollars.
Cash.
Yes.
For the produce
So
that you
go
take
there and get that market.
Mm-hmm.
Produce enough so that you don't starve the Zambian market. Produce enough for the local market. Then the surplus you can sell there. Because if the Zambian demand is satisfied, nobody will cry about you going to sell. But what we see is a situation where we even put barriers preventing people from exploiting such markets, which is a great pity, really. So we should. But again, sometimes we're not even prepared. If you imagine the fact that we border Congo, and we have got very similar economies, they also produce copper. If you've been to the frontier mine just outside in dollars, you go to Mufurila. They are mining, there's big open pit mine just on the Congolese side, and the other operations on the Zambian side. I don't even know if you need immigration to cross over. Those are the kinds of economic opportunities and the integration of the two economies that we are talking about. Now, why not exploit that opportunity? They may not be able to feed themselves on the other side, but they have the money. Get goods across the other side and exploit the opportunity. But as Zambians, we don't seem to be ready to exploit this. I am always amazed that we are bordering a French-speaking country. And all those people on the government, they don't even bother to learn
the language.
The French language, so that they can go over there and do good deals. I've never understood this spirit myself.
Not even Portuguese in Angola or Mozambique.
These countries,
but others learn English.
Yes. So these are the things that we have to do to prepare ourselves to play a useful role in the global economy. You can't just have neighbors there and you don't care about them. You just think
they should learn English and you don't want to learn French.
You say so many things about, but this spirit must change. You want to have a Zambian with go and get it kind of spirit. The Zambian with the can do kind of spirit, then maybe you can say the Obama said, yes, we can.
Yes, we can. Yes, indeed.
Then you can be able to do. But if you always think that we are underdogs,
then which we are not.
Even when somebody who is really supposed to be an underdog comes to your country, because you've already put yourself as an underdog, the underdog now becomes your master.
No.
Now that's the kind of mentality which Zambians should not be associated. We must be aggressive to get what we want. But instead we want to be so subservient and so forth. Yet we should be the masters, because God was so kind to us. He gave us such a rich endowment of everything. Now he must be out there saying, look at my children, I gave them everything. They want me to descend into Zambia and produce these things for them. Is that what we want? Is that what you're asking of God?
No.
So I think the challenge is there. The Creator was so kind to us. And let us show him that we are grateful for the abundance that we find ourselves in, and utilize these opportunities to improve the quality of life. No Zambian should be starving. No Zambian should be lacking medical services or education, because we have the capacity to provide these things.
Thank you very much, Governor. Viewers, we've had a wonderful evening with the Governor for the Bank of Zambia, Dr. Caleb Fundang. Viewers, I'm back in my Christmas hood. Because the message we've had this evening is very, very inspirational, very important, and it's a gift to all of us on how we move forward into the new year. I wish to acknowledge some comments made by Mr. Charles Kalala, who works for Zesco in Ndora, and Mr. Marcel Kanungwe, who is the president of the African Seed Producers Organization and a Makeni farmer in Lusaka. At this point in time, it is my pleasure to introduce my colleague, Mr. Nawakutoma, who is my second Father Christmas for this evening, to give us any thoughts for the program now.
Thank you, Mr. Kandeta. Tonight's Bible reading is taken from Philippians 3, chapter 3, from verse 12 to 16. And the Bible reads, I do not claim that I have already succeeded or I have already become perfect. I keep striving to win the prize for which Christ has already won for me to himself. Of course, my brethren and sisters, I really do not think that I have already won it. The one thing I do, however, is to forget what is behind me and do my best to reach out to what is ahead. So I ran straight towards the goal in order to win the prize, which is God's call through Christ to the life above. All of us who are spiritually mature should have this same attitude. But if some of you have a different attitude, God will make this clear to you. However that may be, let us go forward according to the same rules we have followed until now. This ends the Bible reading.
Thank you very much, Mr. Nawai. Let's move forward as a happy nation, as a happy people, as we get into 2009. From me and my colleagues, we wish you a happy new year. Thank you very much for joining us.